They believed I was just another pair of hands feeding their fire. I stood beside that furnace at dawn, counting breaths with the coal as it woke. I watched 13 men arrive in clean coats, laughing about profits they did not earn from a system they did not understand. They gave orders without knowing what fire actually obeys. They checked numbers without hearing what the flames were saying. I learned that furnace the way my uncle taught me to learn metal by, listening to what it revealed about itself under stress. I discovered it was built with margins to narrow and safeguards that existed only in words. I found the exact conditions where it would stop compensating for the flaws they had built into it. Then I watched those 30 men gather for an inspection, standing close enough to feel the heat, but too confident to recognize the danger. They trusted their gauges, while I counted the seconds between normal operation and structural failure. An older laborer worked beside me without speaking. We moved in rhythm, built over months of careful we recognized each other the way survivors always do by what we did not need to say aloud. This testimony belongs to the chronicles of Kofi, a living archive of truths that were never meant to survive. If you will stand as witness to what I have recorded, mark this testimony so it endures. Signal that you recognize what was hidden. Speak your judgment or reflection below, so this record does not return to silence. I did not destroy that furnace. I simply stopped compensating for its nature at the exact moment when compensation mattered most. I let it become what it actually was, instead of what they believed it to be. My uncle told me that metal remembers its maker. He taught me that systems fail at their weakest points, and that confidence without understanding is just arrogance waiting to be So I ask you now, when those who built something refuse to see its flaws, who decides when the truth gets revealed? I stand beside the furnace at dawn, counting breaths with the coal as it wakes. The sound is rhythmic, steady, a low hiss that builds into a roar as the fire catches and spreads through the grate. I count each breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. The rhythm reminds me of bellows in my uncle's workshop long ago. He was a craftsman who understood that fire is not wildfire, is precise. Fire follows rules older than any man who tries to command it. I remember his hands guiding mine over the bellows. Count the rhythm, he said. Fire breathes like we do. Too fast, and it starves. Too slow, and it dies. I was young then, free, learning a trade that would have made me valuable in my village. That was before the ships came. Now I stand in a different country beside a different fire, but the rhythm is the same. Fire does not care about borders or chains. Fire only cares about oxygen and fuel and heat. I note who gives orders and who understands none of them. The overseer arrives first. He shouts instructions without looking at the furnace. More coal, faster. Keep the heat steady. He does not understand that heat is not kept, heat is managed. There is a difference. The white man thinks volume makes truth. He is wrong. Volume only reveals ignorance. I keep my face neutral and my hands exact. I add coal in measured amounts. I adjust the airflow with small movements. I watch the color of the flames because color tells me temperature better than any shouted command. The owners arrive laughing at 6:30. There are 13 of them. I count because numbers matter in this place. 13 men who own this 13 men who profit from what they do not understand. They wear clean coats. Their boots shine. Their voices carry across the yard like they own the air itself. They do not approach the furnace closely. They stand at a distance, pointing and nodding and congratulating each other on their investment. The day begins with their laughter and my silence. I observe how they approach the furnace without fear, not respect. Fear and respect are different. Respect means you understand what something can do. Fear means you know it can hurt you. These men have neither. They walk close enough to feel the heat on their faces. They lean against railings that are warm to the touch. They gesture with bare hands near surfaces that could sear flesh in seconds. Their certainty triggers a memory of traders who spoke before knowing weight or measure. In my land, traders would come from other villages to buy gold and copper. Some were experienced. They tested weight carefully. They examined quality. They negotiated with knowledge. Others were arrogant. They assumed all metal was the same. They spoke with confidence about prices before they understood what they were buying. My uncle always said, the arrogant ones paid twice once with their money, and once with their reputation when the metal proved different than they claimed. I keep my eyes down and my hands exact. I add coal when the color shifts toward orange. I open the vent when the roar becomes too tight. I close it slightly when the flames reach too high. The owners do not notice these adjustments. They do not notice me at all. They leave the furnace to me and move on to inspect other parts of the ironworks. I am alone with the fire again. This is when I do my best work. The heat rises steadily throughout the morning. It is predictable when respected. Furnaces follow patterns. Feed them correctly, and they perform. Starve them, and they falter. Overfeed them, and they rebel. I remember my uncle warning that fire listens only to structure. You cannot beg fire to behave, he said. You cannot threaten it. You can only understand it. He taught me that fire is a conversation. You offer fuel, it offers heat. You offer oxygen. It offers power. But the conversation has rules, and breaking them has consequences. I adjust nothing yet. I only learn. I watch how the coal burns at different rates, depending on where it sits in the grate. I watch how the flames move when the wind shifts outside. I watch how the metal inside the furnace changes color as it heats dull red too bright, red too orange too yellow. Each color is a message. The furnace accepts my patience. It performs exactly as designed. By noon, the temperature is stable. The metal inside is melting properly. The owners return briefly, nod with satisfaction, and leave again. They think the furnace obeys them. They are wrong. The furnace obeys physics. I am just the one who speaks its language. I watch how the overseer checks numbers but never airflow. He arrives every 2 hours with a clipboard. He records temperatures from the gauges. He writes down coal consumption. He counts the number of loads processed, but he never checks the vents. He never listens to the quality of the roar. He never looks at the color of the flames. Numbers tell him the furnace is working. His eyes could tell him how well, but he trusts the numbers more. That blindness pulls me back to a memory of gold molds, cracked by arrogance, not force. I remember a merchant in my village who commissioned a gold statue. He insisted on rushing the pour. My uncle warned him that the mold needed more time to cure properly. The merchant refused to wait. He paid extra to have it done immediately. The gold was poured. The mold cracked. The statue was ruined. The gold was wasted, my uncle said afterward. He broke that statue before the gold was ever heated. He broke it when he decided his schedule mattered more than the metal's nature. I memorized the overseer's routines, times, and pauses. He arrives at 8, 10, noon, 2, 4, 6. He spends 3 minutes checking gauges. He spends 30 seconds writing. He leaves. He never varies. He never questions. He never looks beyond his clipboard. This is useful information. Night approaches with opportunity settling into my thoughts like dust. During evening loads, I test a fraction of timing. The overseer has left for the day. The owners are gone. Only laborers remain, and most are focused on their own tasks. I close the air vent for 10 seconds longer than normal before adding coal. 10 seconds, barely a breath in the life of a furnace. The change echoes my past experiments under my uncle's gaze. He used to have me practice control. Close the bellows too long, he said. Then tell me what happens. I learned that fire is patient for exactly as long as oxygen allows. Then it begins to change. Not immediately, not dramatically, but measurably. 10 seconds of reduced air changes the flame color slightly, changes the heat distribution, changes how the next load of coal ignites. Small changes, invisible to anyone not watching closely. No one notices. The furnace compensates as I knew it would. I return everything to normal within a minute. The temperature stabilizes. The color returns. The roar continues. I have confirmed what I suspected. The furnace can be adjusted within margins that gauges do not detect. This knowledge sits on my chest like a stone. The owners meet beside the furnace the next afternoon. All 13 of them. They stand in a half circle. arguing profit margins and production schedules. Their voices awaken a memory of councils that mistook noise for wisdom. In my land, village councils made decisions through discussion, but some councils spoke more than they listened. They believed the loudest voice carried the most truth. My uncle served on the Metalworkers Council. He rarely spoke, but when he did, people listened because his words carried weight earned through precision. These owners speak constantly and say nothing of value. We can increase output by 15%, one says. The market demands more iron. Another adds, we must maximize efficiency. A third insists. Not one of them asks how the furnace is maintained. Not one asks about the workers who operate it. Not one asks what happens if the system is pushed beyond its design. I learn they believe the furnace is obedient, not conditional. They believe it will produce whatever they demand because they own it. They do not understand that ownership does not change physics. The furnace will do what the furnace will do. Their demands are irrelevant. I marked this belief carefully in my memory. The white man thinks ownership means control. He's wrong. Ownership means responsibility. Control is earned through understanding. They have one, but not the other. I hear the furnace respond differently. 2 different coal weights over the following days. The rhythm changes. Sometimes the roar is deeper, sometimes higher. The differences are subtle but consistent. Heavy loads create a sustained roar. Light loads create a sharper hiss. Mixed loads create variations between the two. The rhythm recalls songs we used to count pores back home. My uncle taught me that metal work has music. The hammer on the anvil, the hiss of hot metal in water, the roar of the furnace. Listen to the rhythm, he said. It tells you when to act and when to wait. We had songs for different processes. Songs for heating, songs for pouring, songs for cooling. The songs kept time and kept us coordinated when multiple people worked the same piece. I start counting silently again, matching the furnace's rhythm to numbers in my head. 1, 2, 3, 4 for the heavy roar. 1, 2 for the sharp hiss. A fellow laborer begins listening to. I notice him first on a Thursday morning. He is supposed to be moving scrap metal, but he pauses near the furnace. His head tilts slightly. He hears the rhythm. Our eyes meet for 1 second. He nods once. I return to work. We do not speak. We do not need to. I notice him measuring sound instead of sight over the next week. He does not watch the gauges. He listens to the roar. When the pitch changes, he adjusts his pace to match. The memory of chosen kinship in survival stirs in my chest. In my land, during the raids, families were torn apart. New bonds formed among those who remained. Not bonds of blood, but bonds of witness and survival. We recognized each other by small signs, a certain way of moving, a pattern of breath, a rhythm that matched. Those bonds were stronger than many blood ties because they were chosen under pressure. I say nothing to this man, but I slow my work to match his rhythm when we are both near the furnace. His pace adjusts to mine. We are synchronizing without words, building a pattern that others do not see. The pattern holds through the week, through the next week, through the month. By the time winter approaches, we move like one process split across 2 bodies. My hand finds the bronze weight in my pocket during my evening walk back to the quarters. It is still there. The weight is from home. A small piece of bronze my uncle gave me before I was taken. He said, "Keep this. Remember that. Metal remembers its maker." I have carried it every day since. Through the ships, through the markets, through every plantation and ironworks and field I have been sold to. It is proof that I existed before this, proof that I knew things before I was forced to forget them. The bronze is warm from my body heat, smooth from years of hand. I close my fingers around it and continue walking. A minor malfunction draws attention on a cold morning in December. One of the vents sticks partially closed. The roar changes pitch. The temperature drops 3 degrees in 10 minutes. The overseer notices immediately because his gauges showed the change. He shouts for me. I arrive quickly. "Fix it," he says, pointing at the vent. I examine the mechanism. A simple jam. Ash buildup. I clear it in under a minute. The vent opens fully. The roar returns to normal. The temperature begins to rise again. The overseer watches his gauge return to the target number. He nods and walks away. The malfunction is quickly dismissed as routine maintenance, but the hiss as the vent opened pulls me fully into the past. I remember a furnace taught to reveal flaws. My uncle once showed me how to test a mold by introducing small, controlled problems. You restrict air briefly. You add uneven heat. You watch how the system responds. A good design compensates, he said. A flawed design amplifies. He taught me that furnaces and molds and tools reveal their nature under stress. Perfect conditions hide weaknesses. Imperfect conditions expose them. That is when I know something important. I realize the system already contains its ending. This furnace was not built with enough safety margin. The vents are too small for the heat load. The airflow is barely adequate. The temperature swings are wider than they should be. It works, but only because it is operated carefully. If the operators were careless, if the timing were wrong, if multiple small problems occurred simultaneously, the system would not compensate. It would amplify. I begin planning in silence. Not revenge. Not rage. Just mathematics and memory and patience. The white man thinks I am a tool. He is wrong. I am a craftsman with a tool, and I know how tools work. I watch how corrections are made carelessly over the following weeks. The overseer rushes. He adds coal too quickly when temperatures drop. He opens vents too wide when pressure builds. He makes large adjustments when small ones would work better. I remember how precise errors were used to test apprentices. My uncle would introduce problems deliberately. He would tell an apprentice to fix a furnace that was running too hot or too cold. Then he would watch their solution. Anyone can fix a problem, he said. But how they fix it tells me if they understand the system. Careless fixes create new problems. Skilled fixes create stability. The overseer's fixes are careless. He solves immediate symptoms without addressing causes. I note which safeguards exist only in words. The owners talk about safety procedures. They post rules on the walls. They mention protocols during their meetings. But the actual safeguards are minimal. 1 pressure gauge, 1 temperature gauge, 2 manual vents, no automatic shutoffs, no backup systems. The safety exists in the confidence that nothing will go wrong, not in the preparation for when it does. I wait. I do not act. I do not rush. I simply continue working exactly as I have been. But now I am counting more carefully, watching more precisely, learning where the margins are and how narrow they have become. My hand finds the bronze weight in my pocket. It is still there. My ally hums while working near the furnace. Not loudly, just under his breath, a rhythm that matches the roar. The sound triggers memories of coordinated labor under threat. In my land, when groups worked together on dangerous tasks, we used songs to stay synchronized. Lifting heavy stones, pouring molten metal, raising walls. The songs kept us moving as one. If someone's rhythm faltered, we all heard it. We adjusted together. This man is creating that rhythm now. I shift my pace to his without explanation. When he hums faster, I move faster. When he slows, I slow. When he pauses, we move as one process now. Not 2 men working near each other, one system with 2 parts. No one else knows. The overseer sees 2 laborers working. The owners see 2 pieces of property performing their function. But we are building something they cannot see, a coordination that will matter when timing matters most. I do not forget. I never forget. The owners announce a joint inspection day in early January. All 13 owners will visit the ironworks simultaneously. They will tour every section. They will examine every process. They will evaluate their investment together. The news tightens my chest. I pause before continuing my thoughts. This is not routine. Joint inspections are rare. They mean something significant is being decided. I decide this is not a risk, but a convergence. I remember my uncle saying, "Sometimes opportunity does not arrive. Sometimes you recognize that it has already been waiting 30 men, one location, one time." I adjust the plan forming in my mind. The white man thinks coincidence is random. He is wrong. Coincidence is pattern recognized by someone paying attention. This is not chance. This is design revealing itself. I continue my work with the same steady rhythm. But inside, I am counting, calculating, confirming what I have already learned about this furnace and its narrow margins and its absent safeguards. The inspection is scheduled for 3 weeks away. I have time to prepare, time to test, time to be certain. My ally hums near the furnace that afternoon. I match his rhythm without looking at him. We are ready. We just do not know it yet. At night, I test airflow again. Slightly longer this time. The overseer has gone home. The owners are in their distant houses. Only the night shift remains, and they stay far from the furnace unless called. I close the air vent for 20 seconds before adding the evening coal load. 20 seconds, double my previous test. The furnace responds exactly as my uncle once predicted. The flames drop lower. The color shifts from bright orange toward deep red. The roar becomes a hiss. Then I open the vent fully and add coal in a precise pattern, heavy on the left side, lighter on the right. The fire catches unevenly. For 30 seconds, the temperature distribution is asymmetric. The left side burns hotter. The right side compensates slowly. Then equilibrium returns. The gauges show normal readings within 2 minutes. My ally hears it too from across the yard. I know because his pace changes. He stops moving for 5 seconds. He is listening, counting, understanding. Nothing is said between us. We do not need language. We have rhythm. We have pattern. We have synchronized understanding built over months of careful observation. That night I return to the quarters and sit in my bunk in darkness. I remember my uncle's final lesson before I was taken. He held a piece of copper in the firelight and said, "Metal has memory. It remembers how it was formed. It remembers every stress. It remembers its nature, even when forced into shapes it was never meant to hold. I am like that copper now, forced into a shape, but remembering my nature. My hand finds the bronze weight in my pocket. It is still there." I observe how records lag behind reality over the following week. The overseer writes down numbers from the gauges report temperature and pressure, but gauges only measure what they are designed to measure. They do not measure airflow distribution. They do not measure flame color. They do not measure the sound of combustion or the pattern of heat distribution or the subtle variations that indicate system stress. This reminds me how traders once trusted ledgers more than scales. In my land, merchants kept detailed records of their transactions. But my uncle taught me that records reflect what people choose to document, not necessarily what is true. A dishonest trader can make his ledger say anything, my uncle said. But the scales do not lie. The metal does not lie. Reality persists regardless of what is written. I ensure the numbers remain clean. I operate the furnace so the gauges always show acceptable readings. Temperature within range. Pressure stable. Coal. Consumption. Consistent. The records show a perfectly functioning system. The system trusts itself because the numbers confirm its expectations. But I know what the numbers do not capture. I know the margins are narrower than they appear. I know the system compensates for problems it should not have to compensate for. I know that perfection in the records masks fragility in the structure. The white man thinks documentation equals truth. He is wrong. Documentation equals consensus about what to measure. The inspection day approaches, and my body remembers fear before my mind does. My hands shake slightly when I wake 3 days before the scheduled date. My chest feels tight. My breathing is shallow. I recognize this. It is not fear of failure. It is fear of consequence. I recall my uncle's hand steadying mine during a dangerous pour. I was young, barely trained. He was teaching me to pour molten gold into a mold for a ceremonial mask. The gold was expensive. The mold was delicate. The margin for error was non-existent. My hand shook as I lifted the crucible. He placed his hand over mine. Not controlling, just steadying. Fear means you understand the stakes, he said. That is good. Let the fear make you precise, not paralyzed. I poured perfectly that day. I steady myself the same way now. I place my right hand over my left and hold them together until the shaking stops. I breathe slowly until my chest loosens. I do not stop planning. I do not abandon what I have prepared. I just acknowledge the fear and continue forward. In my land, this meant courage. Not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let fear make decisions. The owners confirmed all 13 will attend together. The announcement comes during the morning shift 2 days before the inspection. The overseer gathers all workers briefly. All owners will be present Tuesday, he says. The ironworks must be immaculate. All processes must run perfectly. Anyone who disrupts the inspection will be punished severely. He dismisses us without further explanation. I hesitate inside my own thoughts, questioning whether I should carry this memory forward. This is the moment where I could stop, where I could choose differently, where I could remain ordinary and safe and invisible. I think of the linen keeper from my previous testimony. How she moved me to safety. How she chose protection over participation. I could choose the same now. But I remember something else she said that I did not include in that testimony. She said, I save who I can save, but I cannot save everyone. And I cannot stop what is already in motion. I choose to continue because the furnace already knows. Not because of rage, not because of hatred, but because I have spent months learning this system, and I know what it will do under the conditions I have identified. I am not creating destruction. I am revealing fragility that already exists. The white man built this furnace with inadequate safeguards. The white man operates it with careless confidence. The white man trusts numbers without understanding the system they measure. I am simply going to remove the compensations that hide these truths. Morning comes on Tuesday with cold clarity. I begin the day as always, exact and obedient. I arrive before dawn. I light the furnace using the standard procedure. I add coal in measured amounts. I adjust airflow according to routine. The normality recalls how disasters often begin quietly. In my land, floods did not announce themselves with noise. They began with water rising slowly. By the time people noticed, it was too late to move to higher ground. Fires did not begin with explosions. They began with a single spark in dry grass. By the time people saw smoke, the flames were already spreading. Disasters begin in the gap between when something starts and when someone recognizes what has started. I make the first required adjustment at dawn. I close the bottom vent slightly, just 3 inches. Not enough to trigger alarms. Not enough to change the gauge readings immediately. Just enough to restrict airflow by approximately 8%. The furnace listens. The roar deepens slightly. The flame color shifts imperceptibly toward red. The temperature holds because the fire is burning the existing fuel more completely to compensate for reduced oxygen. Everything appears normal. The owners arrive at 9 in the morning, crowding the space around the furnace. All 13 of them, dressed in fine coats and polished boots, carrying ledgers and talking loudly about profit margins and expansion plans. Their laughter echoes like voices I once trusted. In my land, I trusted village elders. I trusted council members. I trusted people who smiled and spoke of community and prosperity. Then the slavers came with documents signed by those same elders. Agreements made. Profits shared. Community sold. The laughter I hear now sounds the same. Comfortable, confident, unaware. I maintain routine. Step by step. I add coal at the scheduled time. I check the gauges and record the numbers. I acknowledge the overseer's instructions with nods. My ally keeps rhythm across the yard. I hear his movements, his pace, his timing. He is exactly where he should be, doing exactly what he should do. We are synchronized without needing to communicate. 2 parts of one system, built over months of patient coordination. Heat and airflow align into a narrow margin by 10 o'clock. The temperature is stable, but only because the furnace is compensating. The reduced airflow means the fire is burning hotter in localized areas to maintain overall heat output. My memory of gold reaching its true state returns. I remember my uncle showing me how gold behaves at different temperatures. Below melting point, it is solid. At melting point, it transforms. Above melting point, it becomes volatile. Every material has a true state, he said. The temperature where it stops pretending to be what it was forced to be and becomes what it actually is. The furnace is approaching its true state now. I do nothing extra. I add coal when scheduled. I record temperatures when required. I respond to instructions when given. I let design complete itself. The owners stand close to the furnace, gesturing and explaining their operation to each other. They are proud. They are confident. They do not notice that the roar has deepened. They do not notice that the color has shifted. They do not notice that the gauge needles are holding steady only because multiple small compensations are occurring simultaneously. They see what they expect to see. Numbers within range. Operations continuing. Workers compliant. The white man thinks observation means safety. He is wrong. Observation without understanding is just witnessing. The system shifts beyond correction at 10:30. I add the scheduled coal load, but I add it unevenly. Heavy concentration on the left side, where the restricted airflow has created a hot spot. The temperature spikes locally, not on the main gauge that measures average temperature, but in the actual combustion chamber. The left side is now 40 degrees hotter than the right. The metal inside begins responding to asymmetric heating. Expansion occurs faster on one side. Stress builds. The joints. The structure strains against itself. I feel the weight of what I am witnessing and pause inside myself. This is the moment, the point where intervention could still stop the cascade. I could open the bottom vent. I could redistribute the coal. I could alert the overseer. I do not intervene, not because I am frozen, not because I am afraid, but because I have already decided that this system should reveal its true nature to those who built it, without understanding it. The furnace proceeds according to its design and the conditions it has been given. I am not forcing anything. I am simply declining to compensate for what the design failed to account for. My hand finds the bronze weight in my pocket. It is still there. Warm, solid, real. A reminder of who I was before this place. Who I remain despite this place. Silence replaces authority at 11:15. The owners are mid-sentence when the first sound changes. The roar stutters. A sharp crack echoes from inside the furnace chamber. They stop talking. For 3 seconds, there is only the sound of stressed metal and uneven combustion. Then someone asks, "What was that?" The overseer moves toward the furnace. I step back slightly, giving him space. He checks the gauges. They still read normal because they measure averages, not specifics. Everything is fine, he says, just settling. But I hear what he does not. The roar is no longer steady. It pulses. Uneven air intake, creating uneven combustion, creating uneven expansion. I remember my uncle saying truth often arrives without sound. The loudest moment is not the breaking, he said. The loudest moment is just before. The breaking itself is usually quiet. Just a small crack. Then silence. Then consequence. I guide my ally away calmly with a small gesture. He sees my hand move. He understands immediately. He sets down his tools and walks toward the far side of the yard without rushing. No one stops us because we are not running. We are not panicking. We are just two workers moving two different tasks, as workers do throughout the day. The white man thinks danger announces itself loudly. He is wrong. Danger whispers first. Only fools wait for the shout. The aftermath settles like ash over the following minutes. The furnace does not explode. That is not how poorly designed systems fail. It ruptures. A seam splits on the left side where thermal stress exceeded the joint's capacity. Molten metal begins leaking through the crack. Not a dramatic burst, just a steady stream of liquefied iron at 2,000 degrees flowing onto the brick floor. The owners scatter. Some run. Some freeze. Some try to move closer before the overseer screams at them to get back. I observe the cost without spectacle. No one is killed, but 2 men are burned when the molten metal reaches their boots before they can retreat far enough. The furnace itself is damaged beyond immediate repair. The crack is structural. The whole chamber must be rebuilt. Production stops. The inspection ends. The owners leave in chaos, shouting about losses and repairs and investigations. I ensure no trace leads backward. I was operating the furnace according to standard procedure all morning. The records show normal temperatures. The overseer's clipboard shows routine operations. My actions were all documented and approved. Nothing I did violated any instruction I was given. The furnace failed because it was built with inadequate margins and operated with careless confidence. I just stopped compensating for those flaws at the exact moment when compensation mattered most. We disappear into labor. As the afternoon continues, my ally and I are reassigned to clearing debris. We work silently among other laborers, indistinguishable from anyone else. That night I lie on my bunk and feel nothing. Not pride, not guilt, not satisfaction, not regret, just completion, like finishing a pour, like completing a mold, like watching metal reach the temperature where it stops being what it was forced to be and becomes what it actually is. The furnace cools over the following days, unchanged in appearance from the outside. The damage is internal. The structure looks the same, but can no longer function the same. This mirrors how systems hide outcomes behind continuity. In my land, villages that were raided sometimes looked the same afterward. The huts still stood. The paths remained. The trees did not fall, but the people were gone. The continuity was a shell containing absence. The furnace is like that now, present but not functional, intact but broken. I returned to my position after 3 days of cleanup. They assigned me to a different furnace mauler, older, with different procedures. I learned it quickly because I understand the principles. Furnaces are not individuals. They are variations on the same physics. Life resumes around the absence of the damaged furnace. Workers continue their tasks. Owners continue their meetings. The ironworks continues, producing just at reduced capacity. The investigation concludes that the furnace failed due to a metallurgical flaw in the original construction, a weakness in the seam that finally gave way under normal operational stress. No one is blamed. No one is punished. The white man thinks accidents require villains. Sometimes he is wrong. Sometimes accidents require only flawed design meeting inevitable conditions. I do not correct their conclusion. The furnace is repaired over the following 2 months. New chamber, reinforced seams, additional safety gauges, improved ventilation. All the safeguards that should have been included originally are added now at triple the cost. I observe this with the same neutral attention. I observe everything. The white man learns through loss what he refused to learn through design. When the furnace is ready to restart, they assign me to operate it. This surprises me at first. Then I understand. I was operating it when it failed, but I also operated it without error, according to all documented procedures. The records prove I did nothing wrong. They trust me because the system trusted itself. I accept the assignment without comment. The new furnace operates better than the old one. The margins are wider. The compensations are built into the structure rather than required from the operator. It is almost pleasant to work with, like using a well-balanced tool after months of using a flawed one. My ally hums occasionally near the new furnace. The rhythm is different now. Calmer. Less than sea. We are still synchronized, but we are no longer counting toward anything. We are just working. I speak this memory now with care, not pride. Years have passed since that morning. The owners have changed. The workers have changed. I remain. I am older now. My hands are slower. My back aches in cold weather, but my memory is clear. I remember who taught me that tools reveal their makers. My uncle taught me that fire is honest. Fire does not pretend. Fire burns according to its nature, whether that nature serves you or destroys you. He taught me that systems fail at their weakest points. That confidence without competence is just arrogance waiting to be corrected. That ownership is not the same as understanding. I survive by understanding structure, not by rage. Rage is heat without direction. Rage is combustion without purpose. Rage consumes the vessel that contains it. I was not rage. I was precision. I learned the system better than those who built it. I identified its flaws more carefully than those who profited from it. I understood its nature more deeply than those who commanded it. And when the moment arrived where I could choose to compensate for its failures or allow it to reveal them, I chose revelation, not destruction. Revelation, the furnace destroyed itself. I just stopped hiding its capacity to do so. This testimony closes, but the truth remains awake. I'm old now. My body is slow, but my memory is intact. I carry the bronze weight in my pocket still. It is worn smooth from decades of handling, but it is still there. Metal remembers its maker. My uncle said, I remember mine too, and I remember what he taught me about fire and structure and the difference between force and understanding. The white man thinks power comes from ownership. He is hongi. Power comes from understanding what you touch deeply enough to know what it will do when you stop protecting it from itself. I understood the furnace. I knew its margins. I knew its weaknesses. I knew the exact conditions under which it would fail, and I created those conditions not through sabotage, but through the removal of compensations that should never have been necessary. That is not destruction, that is truth. The furnace was always going to fail. I just chose when. Ha! I do not forget. I never forget. Not the lessons. Not the methods. Not the moment when 13 men stood beside a furnace they did not understand and congratulated themselves on their investment. Not the moment when that furnace stopped pretending to be adequate and became what it actually was, inadequate. I witnessed that transformation. I facilitated it. I survived it. And I speak it now so that someone remembers that systems fail not because they are sabotaged, but because they are built wrong and operated with confidence that exceeds competence. The truth remains awake. In memory, in testimony, in bronze weights carried across oceans and decades. My uncle was right. Metal remembers its maker, and I remember mine.